One thing that I'm sure most artists have experienced at some point or another in their career is that state where you simply cannot put the pencil down. Now, when in this state, you may find yourself losing track of time and your surroundings because art at the moment is so much fun. However, I also know that most artists have experienced the other side of that coin, when art is literally the last thing you want to do in the moment. And while in this state, I'm sure you've probably made yourself feel bad for not wanting to do art or be productive. Both of these things can happen, sometimes for reasons that are under our control, but they can also happen randomly too. And that's what makes it hard to plan out our artistic schedule, or for this video specifically, our comic work schedule. So the question then becomes, how do I create consistently when dealing with random spurts of motivation to sudden drops in energy? Now, thankfully, I do think there is a way to sort of trick your body into getting into a sort of flow state, and I think it's the key to sticking with a consistent level of output. However, it requires the restraint to pause work, even when you're having a ton of fun, and also requires you to push yourself just a bit when you don't want to work. But you'll be prepared for this when it happens because we're going in with a plan. Now, what is this magical plan, you're asking, right? Well, it's pretty simple. We're going to make creating our comic so easy, it would almost take more work to not do it. Now, the things you'll need to make this happen are an idea for your comic, which most of us have, finalized character designs. The more information on the sheet you have for all of the characters that will be in your comic, the better. So for instance, having their full body with a turnaround profile if you need to, and it's okay for these to be sketches if you're working by yourself. Whatever color palettes they need, and even some expressions if you have the time. I also recommend having background references, or if you can, maybe even doing a couple of background reference panels to get a feel for what your backgrounds will look like. These are a lifesaver, and for bonus points, if you want to build out the backgrounds that you use in a software like Blender, maybe even Minecraft, Sims, or some sort of just 3D modeling software, you'll be extremely prepared, but this isn't entirely necessary. And let me know if you all would like a video on my particular workflow for this section, as I combine both 2D and 3D to make my backgrounds while still maintaining the 2D look. You'll need a storyboard for a chapter or section, preferably with a script too, but the script is optional. And yes, I do feel like having a storyboard is mandatory for this strategy to work, and I'll go into depth a bit later about why. A drawing program to make a comic like Procreate or Clip Studio, whatever you've been using more than likely will work though. And about 30 minutes a day. Most of my young viewers will have at least this amount of time available a day, but if you don't, find a minimum time commitment that works for you, like 5 or 10 minutes a day, as long as it's something you know you'll have. Now, essentially, all this plan is to complete the comic in an assembly line approach, but the key is to not focus on finishing it, but to focus on hitting your minimum time commitment goal you set for yourself. And at the moment, I think you shouldn't go above this goal yet, even if you're having fun. Because you have to remember, we're trying to establish a rhythm in your workflow to where your body expects to work on something for a set period of time a day. And it's super crucial to stick to this time commitment rather strictly in the beginning to give the habit time to stick. And that's why we started with our super small time goal, like 10, 15, 20, or even 30 minutes. Some people will be able to commit an hour, 2 hours, maybe even 3, but just be positive that that's time you have to commit and that you can consistently bank on that not being interrupted by any outside factors. If you can't guarantee that, then I recommend bumping your minimum time commitment goal back down to something you know you'll have for yourself. Now, in terms of actually putting your comic together, the reason why your storyboards are important is because you'll be using them as a template for setting up your pages. The method that worked for me was setting up all of my pages in advance with the right paneling and speech bubbles and effects already placed. And because the storyboard was already made, it was super easy to not think too much about what I had to do. I simply just copied what was in my storyboard. And this is why I think storyboards are a must-have when doing comics, because you don't want to be bogged down too much with having to brainstorm things when you're in the production phase. You want everything to be plotted out nicely to where all you have to do is mindlessly work for the time period you set for yourself. Now, bearing in mind that you'll only be working on your comic for a set amount of time a day, setting up the panels will take some time depending on the length of your chapter. Again though, if you find this step boring, remember you're only going to have to work on this for the set amount of time a day, and then you'll be free to draw or play video games, scroll TikTok, or whatever you want to do in your free time. It's possible you may not actually begin sketching until day 2 or day 3, and this is completely fine. All we want to do is reinforce the habit of doing a little work every day. And with all of the preparation that you've done, you'll find that it gets easier to do this the more you do it. Now, I usually sketch out an entire chapter, then go back and ink the entire chapter, since I found that it's easier to turn my brain off and work in phases. I used to feel like I needed to complete every panel or page before moving on, but as I've done this more, I realized that that can sometimes lead to page inconsistency, and it requires more brain power to take a page to completion rather than working in phases. And even though it feels like you're getting more done, I've also found that I complete things faster this way, as my mind is able to just focus on the one thing that I have to do during a session, be it line work, sketching, coloring, shading. Now, I'm not going to claim that that's the only way to do this, but I do feel like it's one of, if not the most efficient way to work without burning out. But I'll leave your artistic process to your discretion. And believe it or not, that is pretty much the whole process. And yes, if you have a color comic or webtoon, you may have to add a couple phases for flats, shading, and highlights, but this does not change how long you work on your comic a day. I'd say you want to at least do this for a month consistently before you consider increasing the time commitment for yourself. Now, there may be a couple of folks that will want to go faster, but I'm telling you, the most important thing here is to be steady and work consistently. I promise you this method was the surefire way for me to stick to my last project that I completed in a year, which was a game, not a comic, mind you, but essentially the workflow was pretty similar, where I was not focused on getting crazy amounts of work done, but rather working for a set period of time. Now, this workflow is how I'm completing the first volume of my JRPG-inspired comic series, The Turn-Based Hero. And not having to expend too much brain power after a long workday makes all the difference for me to sit down and work on this thing. I hope hearing my process has helped or given you some clarity for your process, and please feel free to let me know what your comic series is about and where we can read it down below. Now, if you're new here, my name is Chris. I'm a game dev, storyteller, artist, and now a graphic novelist making content here on YouTube to help creatives improve their mindset and complete the projects they want to complete. Now, if that sounds like you, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe to your boy. I upload bi-weekly, and the goal is to stay consistent throughout the year with this channel and on my project, The Turn-Based Hero, which you can find more details on my socials at chrismason_01 on Instagram and Twitter. But with that, I'm gonna go ahead and get about. I hope you guys enjoy the rest of your day, night, or whatever. And it's been your boy Chris, and I'm gonna holler at you in the next one. Peace.